Hey, and welcome on the Inspire channel. It's Jean Nolan here, and today we're welcoming back a very, very special guest on the Inspire channel, the one and only Health Ranger Mike Adams, who's going to join us for a bombshell interview. Really, we're going so deep into so many topics. We're going to explore some of the great spiritual mysteries, and Mike has amazing insight on that. He's going to talk about the importance of prepping and how it actually absolutely coincides with the spiritual side of things. And we're going to go into some things Mike has simply never spoken before on camera. So we're really, really excited for you to join us. But first, let's talk about your financial future. With all that's happening in the world right now, it's a good time to prepare. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. And that's why the certainty of gold and silver in your investments is so important. Precious metals are known to keep you safe from inflation and financial turmoil. And this month, for every qualified IRA, you'll get an incredible 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin completely free as a thank you. You know what to do. Call 877-646-5347 now to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspired Tribe. How's it going? It's Jean Nolan here. Welcome to another inspired conversation here on the Inspired channel. And today we're so excited and grateful to welcome back the one and only Health Ranger Mike Adams. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Jean, it's my pleasure to be back joining you today. And I got to say, the last interview we did was also really inspiring to me. You know, you make my day because you have such an uplifting point of view. And, you know, we spend so much time dwelling in a lot of doom and gloom and things going wrong in society. It's really important to come up for air every once in a while and realize we're not all going to die. Actually, we're going to make it through this. So I hope maybe we can talk about that today, about how we actually achieve that.
Oh, you teed it up perfectly. And I want to say this the same. I felt so uplifted after our last conversation. And as a matter of fact, so many comments reflected that about our last conversation. Just people feeling and the joy, the inspiration, but also the authenticity. And that's really how I want to start this conversation today, because this is the most important thing for me. And I believe we cannot be authentic if we don't allow ourselves to look at the whole picture, see what's happening, but always with the intention, what can we do? How can we improve it? How can we co-create something better? And I think you've been such a shining example of that throughout the years that you've been in the public arena. And so my first question to you is, Mike, something we get so often. Why do you even focus on any negative world events? Why not just spend all of your time 100% focused on the positive, on the new? What's your take on that?
Well, I'm very familiar with the idea of the law of attraction. And so I understand where people are coming from when they say that if you focus on anything negative, that you create that reality. I would counter that with a dose of reality. Let's talk about Tibetan monks who are in their temples meditating and praising the creation of the universe and minding their own business. And then along comes the communist Chinese troops, armed, and they kill the monks. And yes, the soul of that monk, goes on to join in another realm and do amazing things. But for that lifetime, that individual is killed here because there is evil in the world. And there's evil in the world because of the satanic or demonic or dark forces that are at war with life. So I think that the most balanced approach to this, and really the most effective, is to, yes, let's talk about what's good. Let's even focus on how we survive and how we rebuild society in a way that works for we the people. Let's do that. But also, we can't ignore the truly evil demonic forces in the world that are trying to kill us or destroy us or stop us. And remember, those demonic forces feed off of pain and suffering. So a lot of what they're trying to do is actually cause suffering and cause fear and cause famine and what have you. So we need to take steps to avoid those things so that we don't get caught in their dark energy trap that they feed upon. So that's kind of my short answer to that, John.
And if I may ask a follow-up question to that, it does make a difference whether I look at something from a frightened, worried standpoint and add a lot of that negative, low vibrational energy, or whether I look at something from the standpoint of a higher vibration and the intention. I'm looking at this, I'm understanding it now. What can I do differently? What can I do better? That makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. And let me just give you a real practical example of that. So I live on a ranch out in the country in Texas, and I have chickens and sometimes baby chicks. We hatch baby chicks with the mama hens. And these rat snakes want to eat the chickens, of course. And so the rat snakes come along. And I don't panic and freak out when I see the rat snakes, but I do acknowledge that they're there, that they're real. Excuse me. I actually have a snake grabbing pole with a little clamp on the end like this, and I grab those snakes. I grab them. I'm not freaking out. I do this routinely. I'm grabbing the snakes, I put them in a big barrel, and then I drive them a couple miles away down on my ranch, and I release them out somewhere where we don't have chickens. So versus if I were to sit in a room and just meditate and say, chickens are happy and free and safe. Chickens are happy and free and safe. I don't think that would stop the snakes. You see what I'm saying? I need to go out and deal with those snakes. And then that's how I give chickens a life that's happy and free and safe. You see what I'm saying? So we have to be practical, in my opinion.
So basically, you're saying something that I don't take credit for that term, but I call it practical spirituality, and that's basically bringing the two worlds together. If you live, and this has been said oftentimes, right? If you live with your head in the clouds, you're not going to be balanced. If you look down on the ground all the time, you're not going to be balanced. There has to be a balance between our inner spiritual life and the co-creative force within us, and our practical deeds in the physical reality, right? We have to balance the two.
Well, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And it's important to also navigate through the world with that sense of spirituality, which I also see as honoring and protecting life. So one of the things that I am really dedicated to doing is taking these days multiple walks through nature with my animals. And I do that now twice a day because it's springtime, it's really nice, and it's not too hot here in Texas. And as we're walking through nature, I'm looking at the trees. They're alive, they're conscious, the plants, the other animals. We see everything from wild hogs to deer. The other day we saw a turkey. And, what a glorious thing to see a turkey, a very large bird, on the ground. And then as we approached it, it ran and took off and flew away, and they're huge. And it's just like, wow, this is life. And every one of these beings is conscious. So, and yet when I walk, just to be clear, I'm also carrying firearms. See, I always carry firearms for self-defense. Why? Because I need to protect life. What if something were to threaten one of my dogs or one of my goats that I'm walking with as well? So it is that balance. And, I don't carry a gun thinking that I'm going to ever need to inflict violence on some other creature. Rather, it's about preventing violence. And thank God to this day, I've carried a pistol for over 20 years, never had to use it in any act of violence whatsoever. But if necessary, if I needed to defend an innocent life, I know that I can do that.
Well, which is the case for the vast, vast majority of gun owners, is exactly what you just say. Having it, knowing how to use it, but it's also very, very rare. I want to ask you something. You mentioned this in the conversation before we started here. Is you talked about the acceleration of these weapons that are being used against humanity. At the same time, every time such a weapon is used, and we can define that it's media warfare, psychological warfare, now kinetic warfare, medical warfare, all of these things. And every time a weapon is used, you said to me, the awakening is also accelerating. What do you mean by that? And how do you even measure something like that? What do you see?
Well, so let's take the latest weapon system, which is the engineered scarcity of the food supply. So it's very clear that mass global starvation is being deliberately engineered. But how are people responding to that? Well, they're starting to grow more food. They're turning to, hydroponic grow bins. They are going to local farmers markets more, or CSAs, or they're even buying more agricultural equipment, small scale tractors and so on, to plant their own food. So the reaction against the attempted attack, they try to starve us, we grow food. And we should be growing food in essence. Growing your own food is one of the most patriotic things that you could ever do. It's pro-freedom, it's pro-health. And if you're concerned about things like vaccines in vegetables, because that's being done in terms of the research, they're going to roll out actual vaccines in the vegetables at some point. If you want to be sure what you're eating, you grow it yourself. So in other words, by the globalists attacking humanity, they are in fact pushing people into more self-reliance and then being closer to the food that they're consuming. Late last night, in fact, I was working late as usual. It was after midnight, and I was thinking, man, I'm kind of hungry. I could use a little snack here. And I thought, hey, I've got a whole bunch of strawberries in this that are growing right now in this grow. Actually, it's 4 different hydroponic bins. So I walked over to where they were, and I grabbed like a couple of cups of fresh strawberries, and then just ate those and continued on. And how amazing is that, to be able to grow your own food where nature is synthesizing vitamin C out of air and water. And, that's what all plants do. They take carbon dioxide and they take water. So CO2 and H2O, and they recombine those elements to make things like vitamin C, which is nothing but hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, by the way. And they make all these nutrients for you for free. So when you allow plants to grow and then you consume them, you are getting the benefit of all of this natural Mother Nature's synthesis of medicine. And, it's empowering. And plus all the non-physical things, the non-molecular things, the energetic properties are extraordinary. But anyway, that's kind of a long answer, but there you go.
No, it's a perfect answer, honestly. And what most people maybe don't even realize or discount, but people who grow their own food, who are living in a natural space that they created, this, that your plants interact with you, your food interacts with you. It actually knows you, and it actually creates its properties according to your needs. And this is something people don't even understand, what the true benefit of having your own natural space, your own garden, your own food is. Even more than just having the best nutrients. You have actually customized nutrients for you, right?
Well, exactly. And here's something else fascinating along those lines you just mentioned. Most people have never seen plants or animals that have been anything other than children. They've never seen them mature. So you go to the grocery store, you're eating baby leaf greens, you're eating baby lettuce, you're eating baby kale. Have you ever seen a lettuce plant bolt and grow to maturity and build this large tower and release seeds at the top as a specific strategy? Have you ever seen that? Well, most people have never seen adult lettuce. And think about even the meats that people eat at the grocery store, the chicken, the veal, whatever. It's young animals that are never allowed to mature. And so what I do at my ranch is I have basically a chicken retirement center here as well. I mean, they lay eggs for a few years, and then when they stop laying eggs, they're still here. They're still eating bugs. It's a geriatric hen retirement home, basically. But I get to see chickens grow to old age, and I get to see plants grow to old age when I let them go to seed. And that's just something, it's a side of life, a part of the cycle of life that people miss if they're not actually involved in growing food or raising animals. Now, yeah, maybe people see their dogs grow to old age as a family pet, yes, but usually not the kind of animals that people eat.
Oh, no, definitely.
And those
not.
Animals have lives too,
And what a beautiful thing to do, to have a retirement home for animals. I love that. Well, what I have seen is also, and that's just to kind of bring this to a conclusion. I was once told that you never cut off the biggest plant of its kind. So if it's the biggest plants of its kind, you let the biggest one grow because the others aspire to grow with it, right? And so I've noticed this over and over again. When I did that, the others kind of quit growing and just leveled off where they were. And so there's so much communication in animal and plant life that we haven't really been paying attention to. It's miraculous when you really observe it. Now, here's the thing. the real green thumbs and fingers in our family is definitely my wife, Christine. I mean, that's just amazing. She looks at a plant and it just blossoms and blooms, and it's absolutely amazing. So I get to be the beneficiary of that. I have a question that actually Christine wanted me to ask you, because we get this asked so often, especially through this intense time, through the past 2 years, moving on to this. People are awakening. It's like, it's like a mushroom. You don't see anything, and the next day it's just there, and people are awakening like that. But then they ask us, okay, now I can see it. Now I know what's going on. What do I do next? This is the number one question we get, and so I'll pass it on to you, Mike. What should they do next? What should they do with this awakening feeling?
Wow. It's your own personal revolution. Probably most of the life that you've been living is just habit. You've been stuck in patterns. And so I can't give you specifically what things to do, but rather to challenge yourself, throw out everything that you think you knew, and meticulously and deliberately create new habits, new patterns. And you can kind of be your own consultant. You can look at your life, step back, take some time, turn off the TV and the internet for, a weekend or at least, and look at your life and see, what am I doing each day? What am I spending my time with? What's working? What's not working? Why am I doing those things? Was that something that my parents told me I should do? Was that something that my friends wanted me to do, but didn't really help me? Was that something based on fear from 20 years ago, fear that I can pretty much let go of now because it's not serving me anymore? Things like that. And you'll find that you can remake your life even as your own consultant. And within a few weeks, you can set new habits and patterns that will become lifelong habits. And it might be growing some of your own food. It might be engaging in simple physical exercise, for example. It might be spending 10 minutes a day meditating or praying. It could be all kinds of things. But I would say that we're all living in boxes of our own making. And most of those boxes were constructed many years ago and no longer need to be there. They need to be torn down, open up the boundaries, because your purpose is far greater than what you've been living. And I think that's true for all of us, including myself.
Oh yeah, and I mean, if you become aware of it, and once you become aware of it, and you make that a habit to observe yourself, you realize, oh my God, I was just subconscious. I reacted from an old pattern. But when you catch yourself, you can actually question that, and you can begin to heal that, right? You can begin, okay, this is just a pattern. I can change it. I want to move a little deeper into a question that's been coming up for me while listening to you for many, many years. And one thing that I always admired is that you have such a broad spiritual perspective, and you connected beautifully also to scripture. And so we have a lot of listeners that I think you could tell subscribe to the Christian faith or are biblically based. And my perception over the years of studying is that this is also a field where we need to expand our awareness and perspective in terms of the Bible not being the complete book or complete set of books that it once was, that there's so much missing. Could you give a little bit of guidance as to how to expand our perspective with regards to the Bible, to the Christian teachings, and to spirituality in general?
Okay, wow, big universal question right there. Yeah. Okay, well, I would start by saying that I have encountered quite a few people who can recite a lot of scripture, but they have a very rigid interpretation of the Bible, which is that this is it. This is complete. Nothing else is possible. And sometimes they're very, anything that even smacks of a new age type of terminology might trigger some of these people. I've run into that as well. But I'd like to invite people to, explore this and realize that, God is the creator of the universe. So there is a creative force that literally set the rules of physics and created all the matter and all the energy, and then also created a process through which your consciousness is put into your body or put into contact through your brain, your mind, technically, and so that you can experience this physical world. And that whole concept of basically a God-created cosmic materialistic simulation into which you are sort of teleported, that whole concept goes way beyond just the literal teachings of the Bible. So the Bible kind of hints at it. For example, Moses being spoken to by God, but it was a voice in his head. So it was God basically making your mind hear something, and God can make you see something, hear something, feel something, for example. And of course, through God, life can be resurrected, as Jesus Christ did, resurrected one man after 4 days of death, for example. So all the rules of the universe are actually, they can be altered by divine forces. That is a very big concept. And I mean, even some of the things in the Bible, like Moses throwing his staff down and it transformed into a snake, because he was trying to prove the miracles to the kings there. Think about that. That is a divine, spontaneous creation of life from an inanimate object. What does that tell you? That's kind of a New Age thing, actually, to think about, oh, here's a stick and now it became a snake and then it went back to a stick. So, I would just invite people to say, don't put artificial limitations on God's universe, because all kinds of things are possible. And also, by the way, premonition is not supernatural, it is natural. So-called psychic phenomena, they are entirely natural. And this is where a lot of kind of rigid Christians would say, oh, I don't believe in psychic phenomena. Are you kidding me? Have you read the Bible? I mean, there's all kinds of psychic stuff going on in there. So let's be open to these truths that the mind is more than material.
Wow, what a beautiful answer. And I encourage everyone to listen back to this answer. There's so much in there. And to me, one thing that it comes up over and over again in comments and emails is this return of Jesus Christ. And I'm going to give you what I feel or what I see, what my perception is, and I would love to hear yours. My perception is that we have been shown through the teachings of Jesus, of the actual manifested man, what Christ consciousness means and what is possible when one embodies Christ consciousness. So what if this physical return is really a return of Christ consciousness? I ask myself this, and what if we all have the innate ability to open ourselves up to that Christ consciousness? Is that something that it could be a possibility, that we are maybe through translations and over time and maybe even deception have misunderstood this concept?
Oh, absolutely. I think you've really nailed it. Again, the literal interpretation is that a physical, human-looking being named Jesus Christ is going to return, maybe out of the sky. But as you say, the Bible speaks in abstractions so often. Most of it is actually just a metaphor for something much larger. So the return of Christ is, I think you're right, the return of Christ consciousness, but it must happen by the dismantling of the satanic control grid, right? So I think that humanity has been cognitively suffocating or spiritually suffocating under a satanic control grid that literally has deceived people. It has suppressed higher awakening. It has suppressed many of the so-called psychic phenomenon, such as premonition, but that's starting to come back to a lot of people right now. People are having dreams. People are having visions. People are having even auditory voices like Moses had, that for the first time in their lives. And these are not crazy people on drugs. These are very rational people. And yet suddenly their minds are opening up to these things, because I think the control grid is weakening. Kind of like you've heard the magnetic north and south poles are weakening and the poles are wandering. I think the demonic control grid is also weakening, and then kind of some consciousness is breaking through. And when it breaks through globally, that's the return of Christ consciousness, as you say. I think you've nailed it.
And there's another thing connected to that question that I've been meaning to ask you. It's something that people have, for whatever reason, people that see deception in all fields have a hard time seeing it there. And this is the infiltration of spiritual communities with messaging that sounds and feels cozy, I want to say, but it doesn't lead to real empowerment in any way. And one of these messages that's been said over and over and over again is there is no darkness. It's just we just make this up as an illusion in our mind. And if we just let go of the idea that there is a darkness, then we can see that it's all shining and beautiful. And it's just a figment of our imagination. And what better trick, right, than the devil making us believe he doesn't exist, or Satan, or the dark force. But is it something that you've observed, the infiltration of spiritual communities and these concepts kind of being brought into them?
Yes, absolutely. Many of especially the mega churches, I don't think represent any kind of real Christian values anymore. They're focused on fundraising, and they don't teach the book of Revelation. They don't even teach the Old Testament. And they're pushing a lot of culture war type of topics onto their congregations. And that's not what, quote, the church is supposed to do. But understand that throughout history, of course, various church organizations have often been infiltrated and used as tools to manipulate people and turn people away from God. So one of the key elements that has been invoked throughout history is to say that, oh, you can't talk to God, you have to go through us. So we, the church, we are the proxy to God, and we interpret what he means and what he says. And you have to, tithe to us 10 or 15% of your income, and then we'll tell you what God wants for you. I'm sorry, but that's a con. That's a scam. That is, if Jesus Christ taught anything, he said to the people, you are gods. You are gods, as is our God. In other words, you are expressions of God, as am I. And in Hebrew, the word that Jesus said was Elohim. Elohim, which is the same word as the God. So Jesus literally said to the people, you are Elohim, meaning you have this power of creation within you. And yet you stand back. Sometimes Jesus would condemn people for not believing that Jesus was performing miracles. And they would say, oh, you can't perform those miracles. That's not possible. How can you claim to be the Son of God? And he's like, you are Elohim. You can perform miracles, right? That's the message. So you don't need an institution between you and God. You don't. I'm not saying that. Some churches are wonderful. They provide community. They provide support. They do teach the whole Bible. They do teach the book of Revelation and so on. And those are great. But it's not a prerequisite to have a relationship with the creator of the universe, period.
How beautiful, and so true, and true in my experience also. It's the daily prayer, daily meditation that connects me to my creator, gives me guidance. And speaking of guidance, it's also, of course, a question we get a lot. You've said it before, there's an acceleration, an extreme acceleration, and at times it feels like it's almost overwhelming. Now, would you say that this acceleration is going to continue for a while? There's this timetable 2030 that keeps popping up everywhere in all communities. Of course, there's the Agenda 2030 and World Economic Forum. We know that. But could it also be that there is a maybe cosmic event that this year represents? And are we going to accelerate and kind of battle until then? Or do you see this maybe even, maybe even winning the battle here earlier than that?
Yes, it's quite possible that this is all over before 2030 in the sense that evil is dismantled and human civilization is resurrected in essence into a new golden age. But I have to be clear, I think before we get to that, there's going to be even more suffering, even more destruction, dismantling, death, economic collapse, all these things, a lot of despair and a lot of fear, especially among those who had never thought that any of this could happen. People who had never thought about the purpose of life or even preparedness for that matter. So I don't look at this near future with a sense of fear, even knowing that many of us might die as well. There's no fear about dying. In fact, the only fear is really for others, fear of not awakening. Like that's the worst death of all, is not being aware of what's happening. And sadly, many people will die in ignorance, thinking that they're dying for one reason when it's actually for a completely different reason. Thinking, for example, that their government is saving them when it's their government that's killing them. Right?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to summarize that. So, whether your physical body lives or dies through this process, the most important thing is for your soul to survive. Well, I mean, your soul is bulletproof. They can't kill it unless you surrender it. And so you have the choice, the most important choice in your life, which is to choose the side of good, choose the side of life. And in whatever way that you interpret that, if you're protecting life and you're telling the truth and you have compassion and empathy for all living things, you are on the side of Christ and God, whether you realize it or not, whether you use those terms or not. You're on the side of Christ.
Beautiful. And it also, what you just said triggered a thought that when you observe people that kind of run around like chickens with their head cut off and always behind the 8 ball, always feel like they haven't lived life yet or haven't made it yet, or this very, 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 very tiring lifestyle, actually. I feel when you begin asking yourself and accepting that you have purpose and that, there's a purpose to live, all fear goes away kind of naturally, because, you go to sleep at night and you feel completed. There's much more to do. But at the same time, if this were to be the last time you fall asleep in this lifetime, you'd be content and absolutely at peace, because you've been living your purpose. There's not more you can do in life, right?
Yeah, exactly. You really nailed it. It's about purpose. And so many people are still working on discovering what that purpose is. And then some are just completely distracted in the materialist world, or the, how many likes do I have on Facebook and things like that. I mean, what an empty life to fill your day with tasks, but fill your soul with nothing. It's like, okay, I'm busy, but there's nothing purposeful happening here. But here's the good news in all of this. Suffering strips away the ego. So there are a lot of people who are really focused on, maybe their celebrity status or how popular they are or how many material things they can accumulate and so on. Not even preparedness things, because I've accumulated a lot of preparedness things, but I'm talking about like luxury things. It's like, oh, look at my new car, look at my new jet ski, look at my new jewelry and so on. It's, so what? It's just, okay, it's stuff that doesn't really matter. But when people go through a crisis and when they suffer, that ego over time melts away. So there's a humility that comes out of that. And then through humility, people will often discover spirituality. Because once you realize that you are nothing compared to the Creator, once you realize that you have sinned too, that you have made mistakes, and that you're just another human being, and you're really not that special. None of us are that special in this rendition. I mean, we're special in the sense that we have consciousness and we have life, but we're not altering the universe in these little tiny bodies on this one planet out of, trillions of planets out there. We are just here to learn so that we can go on and then become even more profoundly powerful on a cosmic level. Like, this is the training ground. This is like the test ground. Let's see how you do here. If you do good here, then, you'll get more power in the spirit world, with more consciousness and so on. Maybe you'll be a guardian angel for somebody else, right? Maybe you'll be a co-creator of some other parallel universe. Who knows how it works? We don't know. But for people to run around and think, oh, I'm number one on Twitter, it's like, oh, come on, give me a break. That, like, you're living in a delusional world, and that's going to melt away very quickly.
Ain't that the truth? There's a lot of spiritual ground that we've covered, which I believe is so important because it's the foundation of everything else, at least in my perception. But you also touched on something that a lot of people still don't want to hear, which is preparedness and actual physical preparedness. Now, I hear this a lot. I don't need to prepare. God's going to take care of me. Now, I've heard this many times before, and doesn't God help those who help themselves? Isn't that kind of the concept here? We have all these capabilities. Why don't we use them? But actually, in practical terms, today, it's April 2022, and we don't have months and years to look ahead and get started. What can people do today? What do you think are the essentials right now for those who haven't gotten started?
Well, we are facing engineered global famine, and it will arrive in the United States in the second half of this year, if not sooner. I mean, infant formula is already being rationed at Walgreens right now in America. Earlier than I thought it would happen, by the way. There's going to be a real shortage of dairy products as well. I've covered some of the intel on that. But the thing is, preparedness simply allows your physical body to stay alive so you can pursue your spiritual mission. That's all it's about. So since we're here, we're in this hybrid form of spirit, body, mind, and soul, all three coexisting together. You got to keep the body alive so that you can pursue your mission with your soul and your mind, your spirit. And so you need to have a certain amount of food, you need to have shelter, you need to have self-defense, and so on and so forth. And by the way, preparedness, see, I do preparedness at a community level. That's my mindset. God has blessed me with a lot of resources, and being that I'm in the food business myself, millions of pounds of food right now in my warehouse in Texas, I see preparedness as an opportunity to help awaken others in their time of need. So as the supply chain collapses and people are starving or people are desperate for emergency medicine, and I have, hundreds of gallons of povidone, iodine, or isopropyl alcohol, or what have you, then every time that I help somebody and hand something to them, here's a bag of food, here's emergency medicine, and guess what? You were meant for something more, something bigger than this. Use this time to discover, to awaken. And would you like to hear more about that? See, so it's almost like, I don't think of myself as a recruiter for God, but I think that kind of happens naturally when you start to help people and you say, hey, would you like to know where all this abundance is coming from? Like, how is it that you are starving because you believed what the government was telling you? You believe government lies. Now you're almost about to die. How would you like to come to my world where we have abundance? And you can start with this bag of food and you can learn more from there, because none of us have to die. We don't need world starvation at all. No one needs to suffer, but you're going to have to change gears and open your mind to a whole new reality. So we can use preparedness to help others as well.
How beautiful. And something that we often say is, when we prepare, really truly prepare, we have not just a peace of mind for ourselves, like you say, we can actually be leaders in a time of greatest need. And I think that is what we're called to do anyways, not to boast our egos, but to be of help and assistance when it's most needed. So I think there couldn't be a more fitting message, Mike, than what you just said. Now, where can people get access and order the food that you have in your warehouses, and how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, healthrangerstore.com is that's the website where we offer our certified organic, lab tested food, nutrition, supplements, personal care products, everything. And I believe in no artificial fragrance, because I'm very sensitive to fragrance. And you probably, I'd imagine you're this way too, Jean, because when you become a sensitive person, you are hypersensitive to artificial toxins in the air around you or other people's laundry, things like that. So everything that we offer is ultra clean. In fact, the slogan for what we do is, quote, healing the world through clean food. Because I also, that's my philosophy. When people eat a lot of polluted, contaminated food, high in heavy metals, high in trans fatty acids and things like that, their minds become darker and more closed, and they begin to suffer, and they become literally more angry, and they lose access to higher cognitive functions, believe it or not. It's a documented result of eating lead. Your IQ gets lower. So we really can heal the world through clean food, because when your blood is clean and your blood is made from your food, from whatever you're eating and drinking, then the blood that's powering your brain is clean, and then your brain becomes, you have more clarity. Think about all the religious leaders practically around the world in every religion. When they wanted to have real clarity and commune with God, what did? They went out into nature, they fasted for a while, and they ate a bunch of herbs, and they got away from the polluted food of the cities, even the ancient cities, and that was before pesticides and GMOs and everything. So they knew that you had to purify your diet before you could purify your mind and receive information from God. Isn't that interesting?
Well, and it's something that the more you practice it, the more you realize it. And I want to say that for Kristin and I, really, really, although we grew up in very health and food conscious families, Still, we did a really big 180 about 15 years ago, and it just, the clarity and eliminating things from your life. I can't even tell you what happened when I eliminated alcohol from my life about 13 years ago now, or more, 15 years almost. The clarity that came back, and it took a while. This is what people don't understand. It isn't really out of your system after 2 days or so. This takes months and months for it to fully go away. And it's the same with so many other foods that calcify your pineal gland. And I mean, all the things you've been talking about that we have learned from you. But about the Clean Food Inspired Tribe and about Mike's amazing products, please visit the Health Ranger store and get your supply of everything you need and then some. This is a really good time to do that. So I just encourage you. We fully trust, Mike. We have been trusting you for a very long time.
Well,
and so please go ahead, Mike.
No, but thank you for that plug. That's not why I do these interviews, of course. I really enjoy speaking with you about, I mean, I hate to use the word, but about being inspired, but about the positivity. You know, most of the guests I interview really are bringing bad news to the table. And that's an important element of this, but it's very rare that I get a chance to talk with someone like you and talk about how we win. In other words, how we overcome these obstacles. And, you know, honestly, I think decentralization of food is a key element in this. I think that people have to learn to grow their own food, because that's where you're going to get the vibrancy of the food, a lot of raw food. So, you know, I show people this, and I know it looks weird, but, you know, this is my daily smoothie right here. And there is a massive salad that's blended into this every day. And it's the fresh stuff that I pick every day. I do it. I pick kale and chard and lettuce, and I'm growing some beets now. So I've got beet greens and things like that. And I blend it into here with avocados and bananas and things. And so, you know, I'm all about nutrition and being healthy, but also making it very efficient. It's like this is fast food, literally fast food, but really good fast food, right? I mean, it's fresh greens, better than anything you could get in the grocery store. And I don't have to wonder if the organic certification from the store vegetables might be counterfeit, because we've encountered that a lot in the food industry, a lot of so-called organic that is not organic. We see it all the time. And we see beans and legumes that are contaminated with glyphosate, even though they shouldn't be. We see it all the time. So folks, seriously, if you want to know what you're eating, grow as much as you can yourself, and then just drink it, blend it, eat it, put it in soup, whatever. I mean,
and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, if you look at what Mike does on any given day, I mean, you just go to his websites, whether you go to Natural News or Health Ranger, the reports. This is a lot of inspired action. And it's always with a lot of energy in your voice, a lot of energy in your eyes. So this comes from somewhere. I know it's the spirit, but it's also the right and proper nutrition. And I don't want to impose or go too deep into your space, but would you like to share what your general diet is like? Is it just plant-based? Is it carnivore? Is it pescatarian or vegan? Or what? If you want to share, we'd be interested.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Sure. And I don't have a name or a label for it. So I will eat some beef every once in a while. I'll have a brisket kind of sandwich or something, maybe every couple of months. And I will put, like I have these beef sticks. I'm not going to name the company. I'm not here to plug them, but I'll throw them into like a soup. Like last night we made black beans with cilantro and rice and like a hot sauce with these little beef sticks in it. So a small amount of meat. Most of my days are actually plant-based. So I'm very big into avocados. I consume a lot of avocados. You do too? Yeah. And also I just learned that you can preserve avocados in the refrigerator by putting them in a pot of water. And I'm trying that. I didn't know that either, but someone told me that, so I'm trying that now to see if that actually works, because I go through a ton of avocados and sometimes they go bad, too quickly. But in the afternoons, I do this smoothie all day and all for the afternoon, and then I'll eat a meal in the evening, which again last night was beans, and then sometimes we'll do fried rice with our own, like egg fried rice using eggs from our ranch. So we get about a dozen eggs a day right now from our chickens, the ones that are still laying, and we'll do a Chinese cuisine called danbing, which really means egg cake. So it's kind of like a flour tortilla with egg, kind of like a little omelet in the middle. And you do that for dinner. So yeah, we do a lot of like traditional Taiwanese/Chinese cuisine. So we'll do danbing, and we'll do like egg drop soup sometimes with those eggs. We'll just try to use what we have here locally into our food. But I'm not a vegan. I was for a while. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a pescatarian. I'm not a fruitarian. But I eat all those things, just meat in very limited quantities. So there are times, by the way, my blood type is O. And there are times, because I'm so physical on the ranch, there are times where my body tells me I need some actual meat. And I listen to that, and then I consume some meat, and then my body says, okay, that's cool, you're good for a while. So,
And
mean,
isn't that really how it should be? And the, you know, the guidance of your own body, which will tell you what you need anyways. If it's not directed by just taste buds, that's a different thing. You really need to listen to the deeper guidance. I mean, just on a personal note, I've shared this in another interview. We both, Kristin and I, have both been plant-based for the most part. Some eggs, some butter every now and then, a little bit of cheese, but for the most part, for many, many years. And just recently, we brought back a little bit of fish into our diet, and it's really been something that just feels really good to me. And it also was a spiritual awakening to the understanding that all life is our relatives. So we need to understand it's not just animals are worthy of preserving, and plants are not. Everything is our relative here. And so I think if we have the proper understanding, we can also do it with respect, with gratitude, understand the circle of life, all of us.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I don't drink milk from the store, but I would consume raw milk from a farm if it's ethically sourced. And that's like quadruple price milk, but it would be worth it to do that. Although I don't currently have a source for that, but I would absolutely consume raw milk-based yogurt or cheese, like mozzarella cheese from raw goat's milk or something like that. And I used to have, I still have goats, but we used to milk them ourselves. And so we used to have that goat's milk, and that was Nigerian dwarf goat milk, which is very, very tasty, but they're not milkable at the moment. So, and that was a lot of work anyway. That was like the hardest earned milk ever.
It sounds like it would be a lot of work, just the visual, given that they're dwarf goats. So it's like, yeah. I want one last question, Mike. I know you're a very busy man, and I appreciate your time so much. There's something that we get a lot from people, especially now that everyone's really getting inspired to grow their own food. But people say, some have acreage, some have a yard, and there's possibilities. We talked about this. But what about those who are currently in an apartment or maybe even in urban areas? Is there a way, are there communities, is there a way for them to still get some of the benefits of growing their own food? And if so, how can I do that?
Well, I tell you, the system that I've been using and advocating for quite some time, it's based on the Kratky system, which is really called the suspended net pot non-circulating hydroponics. And you can grow these in an apartment. In fact, I'm growing a lot of bins indoors right now using artificial lights, and then I grow others in a small greenhouse area just using sunlight, and they're both doing very well. So search for Kratky videos. That's Kratky. There's a whole lot of these videos on Brighteon.com, by the way, and also on YouTube and other platforms. And you can make these yourself. They're very simple. They use no pumps. They use no electricity except for the lights. And they are incredibly resilient. So, I'm all about prepping in a way that is resistant to collapse. And I've used hydroponic, aeroponic, aquaponic systems, and also thin film circulation systems. All of those systems, if the power grid goes down, your plants die. And in aquaponic, your fish die too, because they have to have constant oxygen. Mm-hmm. So this system, the Kratky system, is the only system I've ever tried that is completely bulletproof. I neglected my strawberry bins for 3 weeks. And I came back and they were full of strawberries. I mean, if the power grid goes down, you don't lose the crops. If you forget to water for a few days, no big deal. The roots are very, very resilient. Once you understand how the roots specialize into air roots and then water roots, and the amount of nutrients that you need to feed these systems is so tiny. I mean, it's pennies per batch. And there's no weeding, there's no soil. I mean, it's the easiest food I've ever grown. And this is what I'm, advocating to everybody. Learn this system because you'll never grow food more easily, in my opinion.
Wonderful. So that's Kratky. So that's Kratky, right?
That's right. That's right. Again, suspended net pot. You have net pots that are suspended from a lid, and then it's a non-circulating hydroponic system. So the water in the bin is just sitting there. There's no circulation. So there's no pumps to break.
So Inspired Tribe, please don't put this off. See, there's a solution for every circumstance. And Mike's been talking about this for many, many years. It's such a wealth of information, wisdom, and just frankly, we've only had our second conversation here, but as I've said before, it feels like a long lost friend, almost like a brother that I get to reconnect with, and Kristin got to reconnect with. Mike, what's a good way for those of our viewers who might not be as familiar with your work? Where can they see you, hear you, learn from you, subscribe? What's a good way?
Well, I do a daily podcast called The Situation Update, but with a warning, it's not all inspiring. Some of it's kind of dark. So it's a mixed bag, but that's on brighteon.com each day, Monday through Friday. And then I write for naturalnews.com. I founded that. And so you'll see my articles there. But I just want people to know, although I do get into some details that are disturbing about what's going on in the world, and some of them really are disturbing, like organ harvesting, things like that. I believe that humanity overcomes this. I believe we win. I believe that, in fact, evil is dismantled, and those who carried out the evil against humanity are held to account at many levels, spiritually included. So I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and that's what you're going to get with my information. Again, brighteon.com.
Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jean. It's always an honor to be able to join you. I hope we can do it again. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. The honor was all mine. And Inspired Tribe, thank you for watching. You're the reason we are here. We appreciate you. We love you. And have a wonderful and inspired rest of your day.
Survival Nutrition is our new free audiobook that you can download right now from survivalnutrition.com. I'm Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, and I'm the author of Survival Nutrition. I'm also a prepper, a patriot, and a survivalist. In this nearly 8-hour audiobook, you will learn life-saving secrets of how to use food and chemical compounds to save your life, even during the worst of times. survivalnutrition.com.